The 2024 campaign by Donald Trump has been amazing. He not only stands to win the Electoral College, but also the popular vote considering past poll error. While Joe Biden in 2020 was up by 7.2%, Harris leads on average by just 0.6%. It is abundantly evident how much better of a position Democrats occupied 4 years ago than they do now. We will also be contrasting the 2024 electoral map with the 2020 map based on polls in this video. So you may observe just how much Trump's popularity has risen during the past 4 years. I have thus already filled in every solid state for both contenders. Our sole concentration will be on the battlefield races. Although you do have the classic 7 swing states, this is the extended battlegrounds map. Races in states like New Mexico, Iowa, and Florida that will be less competitive, but still quite significant. Simply put, the redistributing of electoral votes following the 2020 census causes a minor variation in the electoral vote count between the 2020 map and the 2024 map. There will thus be a minor difference, and generally it has benefited Republicans. We shall thus begin in Nevada, where today Donald Trump leads by 0.7%. After she entered the race, Kamala Harris was ahead in the state for most of the campaign, but just a few weeks ago, Donald Trump surged ahead and is now formally the favorite to win the Silver State. Republicans in a state have it gained since 2004. It will thus be tilt Republican on our map. Joe Biden was leading in 2020 by 5.3% meanwhile. He was headed to defeat Donald Trump in the most recent contest. He only won the state by 2.4% at end. Still, the polls showed him up with amazing 5 points. Arizona also hosts another quite significant race for us. Trump leads by 1.6% today. Out of the 7 most recent polls released, the former president tops 5 of them. Harris is not leading one single one. Now, when Trump challenged Harris and Biden, he has been ahead essentially the whole time. Harris was really ahead just for 2 days. Trump will definitely bring Arizona back, a state he actually lost in the 2020 contest. Joe Biden was leading the surveys 4 years ago by almost 3 points. Eventually, he carried the state by 0.3%. Biden had an amazing turnaround, but Kamala Harris will not be able to replicate the success of the current president here from 4 years ago. And so Arizona is leading Republican today, while it led Democratic last time. Turning now towards Colorado and New Mexico. While in Colorado 4 years ago, Joe Biden led by almost 13, Harris leads by 11 today. Keep in mind that this is a Democratic-funded poll, thus it most certainly did oversample Harris supporters. With a Biden's margin leaning toward that upper range and Harris toward the lower, we thus observe another significant decline for the vice president, even if both states are likely blue. Doubting New Mexico, the vice presidential candidate hardly leads by a likely margin. She leads by just 7.7 while Joe Biden headed by 12 entering the contest. Thus, once more, both states are probably, but Biden's margin was still rather more robust. Down in Texas, we have one of the best illustrations of consistently undervaluation of Trump and just missing the mark. 4 years ago, the former president was expected to only 1.1% win the Lone Star State. He carried it 5 times that margin ultimately. He leads by 6 points today, more than his margin of victory from 4 years ago. Considering past mistakes, Texas most likely votes for Trump by at least a double-digit margin. Therefore, the state will be tilted red on the 2020 map, while today it has become lean, almost a likely state for the former president. Ascending the Midwest, this is where Kamala Harris truly finds a significant departure from where we were 4 years ago, and it becomes rather embarrassing for her. We shall begin in Minnesota, Governor Tim Walsh's native state. In Minnesota, Joe Biden led almost in double-digit margin. He did perform rather nicely in the state. Following Hillary Clinton's 1% victory from 2016, he carried it by over 7 points. Kamala Harris is en route today to win something akin to Clinton's from 8 years ago. According to today's polls, Harris stands at just 4.7%. The most recent Rasmussen survey indicates her leading at just 3. And this is Kamala Harris running with Tim Walsh as her buddy. She has no chance of actually winning the election if she cannot even surpass Joe Biden in the home state of her vice presidential nominee. And thus 4 years ago, Minnesota was probably blue. It entered the lean column today. Turning now to Iowa, polls for 2020 were quite off. For Donald Trump, they recommended only a 1-point margin. Like Texas, Trump carried the state finally by 7 times that margin, winning it by 8.2%. Trump is leading by 4 today. He will obviously win by a far more significant margin, probably 10% or more. But Iowa will be lean red on our 2024 map and tilt red on our 2020 map, based just on the data. We do also have data from Nebraska's 2nd district. Harris is only performing better than Biden in a few locations. Thus, this is among them. She leads by 10%. Biden led by 3.8 4 years ago, meantime. And redistricting is among the causes of this as well. Comparatively to 4 years ago, the 2nd district is far more liberal. That is the only explanation Harris is performing better than the current president was 4 years ago. Arriving in Wisconsin now, Kamala Harris finds nothing less than this. Polls taken today reveal essentially a tie between Trump and the vice president. Trump follows at 0.1%. 6 of the 8 polls conducted here indicate a perfect tie. And looking at the graph's changes over the past few months, it truly has been rather close. Harris leads 2 points at one point. She naturally has lost her lead now. Still, if you just consider the hard numbers, Wisconsin stays near. 4 years ago, however, Joe Biden guided with an amazing 8 points. And this presents Kamala Harris's problem here. Since Joe Biden did not win Wisconsin by anywhere close to an 8-point margin, he really only prevailed in Wisconsin by 0.63. Not even 1% apart, him and the former president. And so, when you consider 2020 poll results in light of 2024, you will truly begin to see why Trump is in such a strong position to win this contest. Wisconsin was not until blue, not lean blue 4 years ago, but rather most certainly blue. The state has turned red today as well. Turning now to Michigan, you could be wondering how Kamala Harris could possibly find things any worse. Nevertheless, they somehow...
What happens when neuropathy takes over and your feet start to feel numb, tingly, or burn? You're dealing with serious nerve damage, and if left untreated, it could lead to the loss of a limb. The good news is you can prevent all this from happening to you thanks to a new discovery. So
Looking at polling there right now, Trump leads by 0.2%. Once more, the figures showing a close race mirror those of Wisconsin. Michigan is the most liberal of all the swing states, though. Thus, there is a drawback. Trump will most certainly win the election and essentially all other swing states if he even gains Michigan by 0.1%. Once Trump entered the game, Michigan was the first state where he led in the polling average. She is, however, losing her lead now. We are in the last stretch of this race. Joe Biden was supposed to win the Wolverine state 4 years ago by slightly under 8 points. It was meant to be an easy triumph. Still, he won it by only 2.8. Indeed, it's just barely better than his performance in Wisconsin. Michigan thus was probably blue on our 2020 map, exactly as its western neighbor. Like Wisconsin today, it has also turned around to favor Donald Trump. Last time, Ohio also looked quite poor for Trump. His expected outcome was just a 0.8% Buckeye state victory. Actually, Biden led Ohio through most of the election. Still, Trump ultimately prevailed in Ohio also by an 8-point margin, quite similar to what Iowa observed. Still today, Trump leads by 7 points. Ohio will be won by him with a double-digit margin. Without a doubt is the case. From being tilt red 4 years ago to today, where it most certainly supports Trump, the state has changed color. And then now, to wrap off the Midwest and Pennsylvania, Trump's margin today is 0.5%. Though Trump does lead in most of them, we observe a decent range of polls. Over the past 2 months, Pennsylvania has been remarkably close. Polling implies it could go either way rather honestly. Now, in the Keystone State, the polling mistake was not as severe as it was in its 2 western counterparts. Biden was supposed to prevail by 4.7. 2 points separated him from the winner. Still, the polls clearly overstated Democrats by rather a lot, although not as bad as in Wisconsin and Michigan. Kamala Harris might thus feel a little better about Pennsylvania. But given her current situation in Wisconsin and Michigan, she has nothing to be delighted about right now. Pennsylvania was lean blue 4 years ago. Although the mistake wasn't as severe as in many of these other upper Midwestern states, today it is tilt red, and Donald Trump has taken front stage, just like practically all of its neighbors. Now we're going to advance up to the Northeast. New Hampshire and Maine are our 2 competitive states in New England. Beginning in the Granite State, Today, Biden led by 11. Harris led by 7.8% 4 years ago. Therefore, on the map of New Hampshire from today and from 4 years ago, both these states will be probably blue. Again, Kamala Harris's performance falls short of what we observed from Biden last time around, exactly as we have seen all around the map. Today, Harris leads Maine by about 11 points, but the polling here has been appalling. These University of New Hampshire surveys are absolutely awful. Kamala Harris cannot possibly win by even close to a 17-point margin. Polling 4 years ago revealed that Biden trailed 13. He prevailed in the state by 9 eventually. Maine will thus be probably blue on both of their maps, but you should consider this information with great grain of salt. Today, Trump leads by 1% in the 2nd district. Actually, Biden led 4 years ago. We thus have another flip from lean Biden now to lean Trump. We will now finish the map down south, starting in Virginia, where we observe another significant drop-off for the vice president. Harris leads in a state Biden carried by 10 and just 6.4% today. Actually, he led in the polls by almost 12% points. Should the polls overstate Democrats once more, Virginia could indeed favor Trump. Though still quite improbable, that is absolutely within the domain of reasonable possibility. 2 new outlier polls, one from Emerson College, of course one of the most liberal pollsters in the nation, have driven Harris's average higher. Therefore, from likely Biden, now just to lean Harris, Democrats have seen a decline in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Down in North Carolina, we undergo another total blue-to-red flip. Joe Biden was expected to prevail in Tar Heel State in 2020 by somewhat less than 2 points. He lost it ultimately by 1.3%. Joe Biden indeed led all through the election cycle, and somehow he butchered it. Trump is leading right now, actually. He drives by 0.5%. Mark Robinson, the Republican candidate for governor, has surely made the race more competitive by constantly running across scandal after scandal. He will lose his race, but he will not significantly affect the top of the ticket election either. Trump will still be free to leave North Carolina with a triumph. Lean blue in 2020 is now tilt red in 2024 instead. Georgia has yet another total turnabout. Now let me credit pollsters. Georgia's polling has been rather accurate, particularly in relation to what we have seen in all the other swing states. 2020 polls indicated Joe Biden's margin of victory to be 1.2%. He carried the state by 0.2% finally. One of the closest states in the whole nation, the polls were rather accurate. Nowadays, Harris's issue is not only that she is not leading, but also that she trails by double the margin Biden did 4 years ago. Trump is not about to lose this state. Though underappreciated in every single poll, Trump is not going to lose given all 9 of the most recent polls from Georgia show him ahead. Over the past 2 months, the polling average has shown Trump favored. Georgia, a state he acquired by 5 points in 2016, will be flipped back by him. The race has thus evolved from lean blue in favor of Biden to lean red in favor of Trump. And last, we have yet another major change, a complete reversal in the sunny state of Florida. Joe Biden was expected to conquer Florida by 2.5 points in 2020. He led all through the political campaign. At last, he lost the state by an even more bigger margin than he was guiding. Trump prevailed in Florida 3.4. The former president today leads with 8.4. He most likely will triumph in Florida by 10 points or more. Donald Trump is going to have a major triumph. Florida has thus changed from blue to red, same as many of its neighbors. In 2020, it leaned Democratic. These days, it most certainly is red, not tilt or lean. Thus, when we contrast the 2020 polling map with the 2024 polling map, this is what results. Joe Biden had 351 electoral votes 4 years ago, en route to an electoral college landslide. He eventually just scored 306. This thus truly reveals just how much polling has passed overstated Democrats. But Donald Trump is actually en route to win an election today. For the very first time ever, he has 312. Harris at just 227. And you can sense the variations in 2016 and 2020. Trump was the obviously underprivileged underdog. Really, he couldn't even believe it himself when he won in 2016. The Clinton campaign was so sure it would result in a triumph. But right now, Donald Trump is driving. It is his race to lose. Kamala Harris lags considerably behind. She really doesn't seem to have enough time to catch up given just 10 days until the election. I really appreciate you watching.